obviously this time of year there's a lot of things going on that may affect your voice, but it's not just the weather that can make your voice stressed out.
No, not at all. You know, the thing is, Walt, that a lot of people don't know is that many of us are at risk, and we may not realize it. So I think it's important, first of all, to identify who is at risk. And these would be people who depend on their voice regularly or who use it excessively. So, example, I'm looking at one.
Yes.
Journalist, an anchor person, also teachers, clergy, singers, and even somebody like an auctioneer. So those are the people most at risk, first and foremost. Something to keep in mind. But then we also have to think about, what are some of the signs? Because sometimes you don't even know if you're at risk, right? I mean, can you tell when your voice is stressed out?
I was saying to you before, I can sort of tell, like, when we have to voice a piece, I can, I'm talking and I go through, and I can, as I sort of get towards the end of it, I can feel I'm kind of losing it, but...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, what you're describing, Walt, is called vocal fatigue. So that would be one symptom. But also if you have any type of throat pain or any pain in the larynx area, the laryngeal area, also, if the voice gets a little bit breathy, that's a problem. And if there's hoarseness, those would be indications that the voice is potentially starting to get a little overworked or stressed out.
So what should somebody do if they find themselves doing that? And should people just kind of keep an eye on themselves anyway, because you might not notice those signs so much?
That's a perfect insight to this. And what we really want to do, there are several things you can do. First of all, posture. I'm looking at yours. Yours is great. So seated posture and standing posture make a huge difference. But first, we want to think about what is memory. We have to even understand that. And very simply, Mark, really it means recalling any information that we've either learned or experienced.
Okay.
And so memory can go one of two ways. Short-term memory, so I always have to remember the phone number of the station when I arrive here so I can call in. And so we usually remember that only for a few minutes, up to 7 digits. But then we have long-term memory, and that's information that we choose to consciously or unconsciously store for an extended period. Let me give you an example. Something meaningful like spouse's birthday. I bet you know that, right?
Yes.
That's meaningful to you. How about skills that you need to be such a successful anchor? You remember that, right? Okay. And then there's emotional information. Maybe you remember your first day on the job at Fox 23 News. So we remember that. Okay. So that's really what memory is.
My mother could never take a compliment, for instance, and you tell her all the food was great, and she just couldn't accept it, but there's the art of giving it and accepting it. So where do we begin here?
First, I think it's important to understand why do we even compliment? Because there is a reason behind it. And there are 3 good reasons to give compliments. The first is that it happens to be a great positive conversation starter. So that's a good thing to do. Sometimes if we're a little awkward at starting off a conversation, offer a compliment.
Okay, paves the way.
Yeah, it does. Very good. It also promotes goodwill because usually you're conveying praise. So that certainly helps. And another reason that people may not think about is it can be a stepping stone to ultimately asking for help. Let me give you an example. Let's say I said to you, so Mark, since you're so knowledgeable about journalism, I'd love to talk to you about pursuing this as a career.
Oh, very good. And you did that in a way that wasn't condescending or had an I could tell it was sincere. So see, that would be
exactly. And it's also called more of an indirect compliment.
This became a big national story because it had all the elements going, and the guy certainly could have handled it better. He's lost his job since then. So let's talk about ways to perhaps avoid something from getting to that level.
It really doesn't need to get to that level. I think what we're seeing, first of all, we think about this event as I call it the tarmac tirade.
That fits.
And it was sort of a meltdown, wasn't it?
I would say so.
What really is behind that, though, is what we want to pay attention to. Why are these meltdowns occurring? Because I think in general, people seem to be angrier and becoming more impatient. Now, you think about the workplace, well, we have a lot of job dissatisfaction. That seems to be growing. That leads to employee disengagement, and then sometimes workplace aggression. But as I said, I don't think that has to happen, and I'm a firm believer it has to do with communication in the workplace. So I have 6 steps today I'd like to touch on to be more proactive and try and manage these risks.
We're anxious to hear those, because also those people in this economic times may be taking on more responsibilities too, and duties. So what are some of these steps then?
Very good point. Mark, the first one has to do right from the beginning with the interviewing process and the employee selection process. And I think that too many employers take this very lightly. They go in, they're unprepared. So my first tip for communication is start coaching the managers who need to interview so they know what to ask for, they have a job description, and they're asking behavioral questions like, what would you do, Mark, if this happened?